this. It turns out you don't have to spend millions to make millions. One company changing the game for everyday investors, providing an opportunity that's typically only available for the rich and famous. Joining us now, Sweater Ventures founder and CEO, Jesse Randall. Great to have you here. What I love about the company is for as little as $500, I can get in on a venture capital seed round. Typically, I can't get into a company until they're public, and I've missed out on that easy early money. Is this to you classic accessibility and the democratization of finance? Oh,
definitely. I mean, it's been a really interesting trend the last few years to see how these industries that have been locked up are slowly opening to more of the retail investor, the regular person, to be able to get involved. And venture capital is sort of the crown jewel of this entire world, right? So Sweater's very excited to be bringing this to the masses, right? So that we can all get in a little bit earlier.
So Jesse, everybody knows the VC world is the place where you can make the big money. You find that early stage company, you get in early, you make a lot of money. But everybody also knows that's the really risky part of the investment structure, where you get far more failures than you get successes. So for somebody looking at your fund, this is somebody who didn't have access before, now they do. How do they assess the risk-return profile of what you're doing?
Well, it's definitely in that riskier end of the spectrum, right? I mean, when you put together a portfolio, you don't want to put everything in, bonds, right, and just sit on that all the time. There's a lot more that you could be doing with your portfolio. So recognizing the risk is important, but also recognizing the potential for that upside is just as important, so that you can get that diversification. And, when you pick that apart and you examine things happening like with inflation right now, you need to be able to put your assets to work in something that could potentially lead to something that's much better inside your portfolio. There is risk associated with it, but that's important.
I love that. And we were talking about diversification a little bit earlier in the show, and inflation isn't going down fast enough, and how if people haven't started already, they really need to start thinking about it now. But let me ask you this. It's called the Cashmere Fund. I have friends who work in venture capital, and before they'll accept a job at a new firm, they really shop around. They really want to make sure, because they're going to take that low salary for their equity shares, and they really want to have confidence that that company is going to do well. How do you guys choose the companies that go into the Cashmere Fund?
Oh, this is the fun part. Honestly, looking at companies all day is what me and my team just love to do. I mean, you dig in and you understand where these founders are coming from. And at the earliest stages, that's probably 70 or 80% of the equation. Making sure there's deep alignment between what they're seeking to do and their personal background and what's going to drive them to get there. And that's really the funnest part. Then there's all the technical stuff that you have to get into. And, we could talk about that boring stuff all day long, but ultimately you have to make sure that the company it can get big enough, right? I mean, it really has to be able to scale and provide the types of returns that offset the risk. And so we go through deep processes with all the companies that we interact with. And that's one of the beauties of how we're delivering this to the public, is that the individual person typically doesn't have the background and experience to be able to do that themselves.
Right.
And so you provide this money into the Cashmere Fund as an investment, and then we do all that hard, heavy lifting and make sure that these companies are well vetted.
Just quickly, what's hot? What's not? Is it all tech and biotech? What's the cool new startup sector out there?
Oh, well, that's the interesting thing about looking at the venture world, is that every one of these sectors has its own kind of benefits and offsetting risk inside a broader portfolio strategy. But I mean, some of the hot ones right now, AI is just going off the hook. I mean, there's a lot going on with ChatGPT and everything that can happen with these different advances that are coming from a new foundation of AI that's really exciting. But it's not the only thing out there. I mean, there's biotech, there's strong and steady in SaaS and business-related software, but also consumer goods are fantastic. You can get in front of consumers like you never could before. So it really depends on how you want to see the world.
Jesse, great to have you today. Thanks so much for sharing. I think that's really important for our viewers to think about these things. They've taken some risks on, like crypto and whatnot, but this could be something to think about for the future. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.